So the more you read the history of the states in Rajputana, or you read the relationship between the Chamundeshwari temple and the princely state of Mysore, and how they went about dedicating their kingdoms or creating policies which are conducive to the furtherance of dharma, it is inconceivable that the final document which came into force, or which was presented on the 29th of November 1949 and came into force on the 26th of January 1950, is anti-dharmic in nature. That is something that you just cannot come to a conclusion to at all. So there are some brilliant documents that my research team has actually managed to pull out, which I'm in the process of actually going through and presenting it before the larger audience. And hopefully I'll convert that into a book in the due course of time. I'm trying to find a co-author who has a strong hold of history for this, which effectively captures the fact, or which captures the following three facts. One, the myth that the citizens of this land need to be educated in the values of Magna Carta can be busted for the simple reason that we don't need to be taught the concept of confederacy, we don't need to be taught the concept of constitution, we don't need to be taught the concept of free speech, we don't need to be taught the concept of a republican state which has existed for at least a good 2000 years in this country in various places. So when you think of, let's say, even the Mahabharata, or you think of any of these Itihasas and Puranas, when you speak of the Yadavas, you do not speak of them as having a king, you actually speak of them as a confederacy. The Vrishnis were effectively a confederacy. So in their negotiations with third parties or in their own internal decision-making processes, they were democratic in nature. And this seems to have been captured by modern authors as part of their scholarly works written in the 1920s and 30s. So the only thing that perhaps sometimes we may have a problem with in terms of a mental barrier is because that particular document is written in English, we may assume that therefore the person who's writing it is also anglicized in his mindset. Perhaps that may not be true, because if all of us can speak in English and our first language is English in most communications, and we still think of ourselves as Bharatiyas and Indics, I think we should give the same credit to people who existed at least 100 years ago, okay? Because I'm sure they're slightly more rooted in Indic than us, okay? So as far as I'm concerned, one theory that needs to be presented and pushed in a very strong way, because the Constitution has effectively become the battleground for the future. Having lost political assertion and having lost avenues in every other place, I think the Constitution is now going to be the sole battleground in a lot of places. Therefore, as I've written recently, the nature of this document needs to be understood. So how do you build this argument and how do you build this logic? One, if that particular document has always been treated as a socio-politico-legal document, legal is at the far, or let's say it's at the fag end of this particular calculus, which means the bare text of the Constitution effectively occupies a position which is informed by the social circumstances as well as the political circumstances which led to the crafting of this particular document. Therefore, there is no provision of the Constitution which can be divorced from the history of the making of the Constitution. So, one more example. I keep getting this, this beautifully informed and thoroughly lettered statement as far as the law is concerned that no, the Indian Constitution should be a 15-page booklet like the US Constitution. I'm sorry, I think that is perhaps the most uninformed statement that anybody can make, because the circumstances in which this particular country was created was vastly different from the circumstances in which the United States was created. Here you have gone about talking to various princely states to come together to form a political unit called Bharat, and as a consequence of which the document was supposed to capture the terms of negotiations between the princely states and the Indian Union, which is why when you look at the chapter of the Constitution that deals with the relationship between the Union as well as the states, a significant portion of that particular chapter is informed by the terms of those negotiations, so that princely states do not lose their say with respect to the one central issue, their identity.